Mara? Mara? No. No, that's not possible. Mara. It's really you.
Rain hit the windshield in slow, deliberate drops, the kind that made the city lights smear into ribbons of gold and red. Samuel Okafor kept both hands on the wheel of his taxi, engine idling outside the glass tower on Belmont Avenue, watching the revolving doors spin out another wave of people who would never look at him twice. He had been driving this city for 11 years, long enough to know which fares tipped, which fares talked, and which fares treated the back seat like a confessional booth they'd forget by morning, long enough to know the sound of a bad night before it started. Tonight had that sound. A man stepped through the revolving doors like he owned the air around him. Tailored coat, unhurried stride, phone pressed to his ear though he wasn't speaking into it. Samuel recognized him. Everyone in the city did, in the vague way you recognize a billboard. Julian Voss, the kind of name that appeared in headlines about mergers and charity galas in the same week, never explaining which one was real. Voss opened the back door without waiting for it to be offered. "Riverside Memorial," he said. "Fast." Samuel pulled into traffic. In the mirror, Voss's face had none of the ease from the lobby. His jaw was tight. His hands, folded in his lap, weren't still, thumb pressing hard into his palm, over and over, like he was trying to keep something inside his own skin. The city passed in wet smears of neon, a bakery shuttering its grate for the night, a couple sharing an umbrella too small for both of them, a bus idling empty at a stop no one was running for. Ordinary things, moving past a man who looked, in the mirror, like ordinary things had stopped belonging to him a long time ago. "You always drive this route this time of night?" Voss asked, not really asking, the kind of question people use to fill silence rather than receive an answer. "Most nights end up somewhere near here eventually," Samuel said. "Hospitals don't keep hours. Neither do the people who need them." Voss's eyes flicked to the mirror, meeting Samuel's for the first time since getting in. Something passed between them. Not quite recognition, but the beginning of it. The way two people occasionally clock each other as more observant than the transaction requires. 10 minutes passed in silence. Then Voss leaned forward and dropped a folded stack of bills onto the passenger seat. Not paid. Dropped. The way you'd toss something you didn't want touching you for long. "Keep the change," he said. "Just get me there before—" He stopped. Didn't finish it. Samuel glanced at the stack. Even folded loosely, it was more than a week of fares. He didn't take it. "Sir, the meter's running. I'll charge what's on it. I don't want change. I want speed. Take the money and drive faster." "I'm already driving as fast as this rain allows," Samuel said evenly. "And I don't charge extra for a man in pain." Something in Voss's face shifted. Not gratitude. Not yet. Confusion. Like he'd expected the transaction to end the conversation, and instead, it had opened one. "You don't know anything about my night," Voss said. "No," Samuel agreed, "but I know what a man sounds like when someone he loves is in a hospital bed. I've heard it before. Money doesn't fix the traffic light 2 blocks up. Just let me drive." Voss sat back. The bills stayed on the seat, untouched by either of them. A small green wall between two strangers. They didn't speak again until 3 blocks from the hospital, when a figure stepped off the curb into the rain-slick street, not walking, stumbling, directly into the taxi's path. Samuel slammed the brake. The tires screamed against wet asphalt. The car stopped 4 feet from a woman who hadn't even looked up, hadn't even registered the danger, her whole body swaying like something inside her had already given out. For a moment, no one in the car breathed. Then Voss said the word that would change the rest of the night. Quiet. Urgent. Unmistakable recognition cracking his composed voice in half. "Mara?" Samuel was out of the car before Voss finished reaching for the door handle. The woman, Mara, if that was truly her name, had sunk to her knees on the wet pavement, one hand pressed to her side, dark fabric of her coat darker still, where it clung to her ribs. "Ma'am, can you hear me?" Samuel crouched beside her, rain running down the back of his collar. "Stay with me. I'm going to help you." Her eyes found his, glassy but present. "I need," her breath caught. "I need to find someone. Before—" "You're bleeding," Samuel said. "That comes first." Voss had gone very still on the curb, staring down at her like a man looking at a ghost he'd spent years convincing himself he'd imagined. "You know her?" Samuel asked, not looking up, already working his jacket free to press against her side. "I did," Voss said. "A long time ago. She worked for my father. Before—" He stopped himself again. Whatever sentence he kept almost finishing tonight, he wasn't ready to finish any of them. Mara's hand closed weakly around Samuel's wrist. "The hospital," she managed. "Riverside. My brother. He doesn't have long. I was trying to reach him and someone—" Her eyes fluttered. "Someone didn't want me to." Samuel and Voss exchanged a look that carried an entire unspoken negotiation. This was no longer two destinations. It was one. "Help me get her in the car," Samuel said. Voss didn't hesitate the way Samuel expected a man like him to hesitate. He knelt in the rain in a coat that cost more than the taxi's engine and helped lift her, careful of her side, murmuring something too low for Samuel to catch. An apology, maybe, or a promise, the kind exchanged between people with history too heavy to explain in a crosswalk. In the back seat, Mara's breathing steadied slightly once the pressure held. Voss sat beside her, and for the first time all night, his hands were still, one of them wrapped loosely, carefully, around hers, like he was afraid that letting go would make the last several years true all over again. Samuel drove. Faster now, but not reckless. The particular fast of a man who has learned exactly how much a car can be trusted in rain like this. "Who did this to you?" Voss asked her quietly. Mara's laugh was thin, humorless. "You really don't know, Julian? After everything you signed?" The name landed on him like a slap. Samuel watched in the mirror as Julian Voss's face went the color of the rain. "What did I sign?" "Ask your lawyers," Mara whispered. "Or ask why my brother's medical trial funding disappeared the same week your company acquired the lab running it." The taxi went quiet, except for the wipers, beating time like a countdown. Neither man in that car had agreed to start. Riverside Memorial's emergency entrance swallowed them in fluorescent light and motion. Nurses, a gurney, Mara's voice fading into professional hands that knew what to do with a wound Samuel had only been able to slow. Voss stood frozen at the doors after they wheeled her back, like a man who'd been handed a problem too large to hold and too personal to put down. "You should sit," Samuel said, nodding toward the waiting room chairs. "You've done what you can for now." I don't understand what she meant. Voss's voice had lost every trace of the boardroom certainty it carried in the lobby an hour ago. The acquisition. It was routine. Standard portfolio expansion. I don't personally review every— He stopped, hearing himself. "I don't personally review anything anymore. That's the problem, isn't it?" Samuel didn't answer. It wasn't his place to. Voss sat, finally, in one of the vinyl waiting room chairs, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like it might rearrange itself into an answer. A television bolted to the wall played the news on mute. A weather map, a stock ticker crawling numbers no one in the room was watching. Somewhere down the hall, a vending machine hummed its single unbroken note, the most honest sound in the building. "I used to know people like her," Voss said, more to himself than to Samuel, "before my father died. Researchers, engineers, people who came to pitch meetings with actual passion instead of projected quarterly returns. I used to sit in on those meetings just to remember why the company existed in the first place." He shook his head slowly. I don't sit in on anything anymore. I sign what's put in front of me. I've been signing my way through my own life for 2 years. But Voss looked at him anyway, the way people sometimes look at strangers, precisely because strangers have no stake in flattering them. You could have taken the money, he said. Back in the car, most people would have. Most people aren't wrong for taking it, Samuel said. I just didn't want it. I wanted you to see the road. Why? Because whatever you were driving toward tonight, it wasn't going to wait for you to be a passenger in your own life. Samuel glanced toward the doors where they'd taken Mara. Seems like I was right. Voss sank into a chair, elbows on his knees, staring at his own hands like he was seeing them, really seeing them, for the first time in years. Her name is Mara Whitfield, he said quietly. Her brother, Elias, ran a small trial lab, rare pediatric blood disorder research. Underfunded, understaffed, but it was working. I remember her presenting to my father once. She had this conviction, like the work mattered more than the money ever could. What happened? My father died 2 years ago. I inherited controlling interest in things I never asked to run. I signed what my board put in front of me. I trusted people to tell me the truth about what I was signing. He looked up. I think I've been trusting the wrong people for a long time. A nurse appeared at the doors. Family for Elias Whitfield? Voss stood so fast the chair scraped the floor. I'm a colleague of his sister's. The nurse's expression didn't soften the way good news would have allowed it to. You should come with me, she said. Both of you, if you're able. The room was quiet, in the particular way hospital rooms are quiet. Machines breathing where a person's lungs no longer fully could, a green line tracing a heartbeat that had grown stubborn about continuing. Elias Whitfield looked younger than Samuel expected. 30, maybe, pale against white sheets, tubes threading from his arm, but his eyes were alert when they opened, sharp despite everything working to dim them. Julian Voss, Elias said, voice a rasp. Didn't expect the man himself to show up for the funeral preview. Elias, save it. Elias's eyes moved to Samuel instead, curious. You're not one of his. I'm a taxi driver, Samuel said simply. Your sister flagged me down. Wrong place, wrong time, or maybe the only right one tonight. That earned something like a smile. Mara always did trust strangers more than people with business cards. His gaze returned to Voss, harder now. You want to know what happened to the funding? Yes. Your board found out our trial was 3 months from results that would have made half your company's pharmaceutical patents worthless. Cheaper cure, no patent to protect, no billion-dollar exclusivity deal waiting on the other end. So they buried us, called it a portfolio realignment, cut the funding, seized the research under an acquisition clause, and let the whole thing die quietly in a filing cabinet. Elias's breath caught, and a machine beside him beeped a warning that made Samuel's stomach tighten. Mara went digging, found emails. People don't like it when you find their emails. Someone hurt her because of this? Voss's voice had dropped to something almost unrecognizable. The voice of a man watching his own name become a weapon he never chose to hold. Someone made it clear she should stop looking, Elias said. I don't imagine they expected her to survive the message and still make it here tonight. His eyes closed briefly, exhaustion pulling at him. The research is still out there, Julian. Encrypted. Mara has it. If it dies with her, or with me, that cure dies too. Real families. Real kids. Not a metaphor. Voss stood very still for a long moment. Then he pulled a chair to the bedside and sat, the way a man sits when he has finally decided to stop standing at a distance from his own consequences. Tell me everything, he said. All of it. And then tell me how to fix it before sunrise. Samuel waited in the corridor while Elias talked. Not because he was asked to, but because some conversations belong only to the people inside them. Through the narrow window in the door, He watched Julian Voss listen in a way Samuel doubted the boardrooms of Belmont Avenue had ever seen from him. No phone, no interruption, just a man absorbing the true cost of decisions he'd signed without reading. Mara found Samuel first, wheeled out to a recovery bay down the hall, IV line taped to the back of her hand, color returning slowly to her face. She caught his eye through the open curtain and gestured him over. "You're the driver," she said. "Samuel, you didn't take his money. Wasn't mine to take. Not for doing what anyone should have done." Mara studied him with the same sharp attention her brother had shown. The family trait, apparently, of seeing people clearly and quickly. Most people would have taken it and never known any of this happened. You'd have dropped him at the hospital and driven off rich and untouched by any of it. "Would that have made it not happen?" Samuel asked. "Whatever's wrong here was wrong before I picked him up tonight. I just didn't want to get paid for looking away from it." She smiled faintly, then winced as it pulled at her side. "My brother doesn't have much time. Weeks, maybe. The doctors have been gentle about the number, which means it's worse than they're saying." "I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Help me be right." She reached for a slim data drive taped inside her coat pocket, the fabric still damp from the street. "This is everything. Every email, every internal memo, every signature that buried the cure. My brother spent 6 years building. I was trying to get it to a journalist before someone stopped me permanently. I think tonight they nearly did. Why not just publish it? Burn the whole thing down?" "Because burning it down destroys the company that's still, legally, the only entity holding the patents and lab equipment we need to finish the trial. I don't want revenge, Mr. Okafor. I want the 12 kids in that trial to survive the year." She looked toward the door where Voss sat with her brother. "Which means I need him to fix this from the inside, not just confess to it from the outside." Samuel considered this. "You've thought about this a long time." "Every night for 2 years," Mara said. "You plan a lot of speeches for a man you never expect to actually sit across from again." I had at least 4 versions of tonight ready, and none of them involved bleeding in the street. A ghost of dark humor crossed her face. "Funny how the real version never matches the rehearsal. Does this one feel closer to right?" She considered the door again, weighing something Samuel couldn't see. "Ask me in the morning." Voss emerged a few minutes later, pale, jaw set with something that looked less like guilt now and more like resolve. He crossed to Mara's bedside without hesitation. "I'm reinstating the funding tonight," he said. "Full budget, plus what should have gone to it these 2 years. I'm calling my general counsel and my head of R&D right now, and by morning there will be a signed directive returning full research authority to your brother's team, effective immediately, irreversible without board unanimity, which I control enough of to guarantee." "That won't undo 2 years," Mara said quietly. "No," Voss agreed, "but it's the only thing I can actually do at 4 in the morning that matters more than an apology." He paused. "And I want the people who did this to you found. Whoever decided silencing a researcher was an acceptable cost of doing business, they don't work for me anymore. Tonight, whoever they are." Mara held his gaze a long moment, weighing a decade of distrust against the particular exhaustion of someone finally being heard. "Then start making calls," she said. "My brother doesn't have years to wait for you to mean it." By 4:40 a.m., the hospital corridor had become a strange kind of war room. Voss stood near the window with his phone finally pressed to a real conversation, voice low and unmistakably in command. Not the performative command of the lobby hours earlier, but something rawer, more urgent. A man building a bridge back to himself, one phone call at a time. Samuel sat beside Mara, who'd insisted on being wheeled closer to her brother's room, despite the nurse's protests. "You didn't have to stay," Mara said. "I know. Most drivers would have logged the fare and gone looking for the next one." Samuel considered that. "There's always a next one. There's not always a night like this." He looked toward Elias's door. Besides, someone should make sure he actually does what he said he'd do, and not just what sounded good at 4 in the morning. Mara almost laughed. You don't trust him. I don't know him. I know what he did in my back seat, and I know what he's doing right now. So far, those two things match. Samuel shrugged. That's more than most people get from me on a first fare. At 5:12, Voss returned to them, exhaustion carved into every line of his face. But something else there too, a kind of lightness that hadn't been present in the revolving doors of Belmont Avenue. It's done. Signed, filed, witnessed by counsel. The lab reopens Monday with full funding and full protection under a clause my father actually wrote years ago, ironically, for exactly this kind of situation, protecting research from corporate interference. I just never bothered reading it until tonight. And the people responsible? Mara asked. Being identified as we speak. I won't lie to you and say I know yet how far it goes, but I intend to find out, and I intend for the answer to matter. He looked at her steadily. I owe you more than a phone call at dawn. I know that. But it's what I can give you tonight, and I meant every word of it. Mara studied him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Not forgiveness. Not yet, but something adjacent to it. A door left open instead of locked. Through the window, the sky had begun its slow bruise toward morning, black softening to deep blue at the edges. Samuel stood, stretching a body that had been awake far longer than any single fare should require. I should get back to my taxi, he said. Some other night's waiting for someone else. Voss reached for his wallet out of pure habit, then stopped himself, a small, real laugh escaping him, the first unguarded sound he'd made all night. Right, you don't want the money. I didn't say that, Samuel said, allowing a small smile. I said I wasn't driving faster for it. The fare's still on the meter, and it's been running a long time tonight. Voss laughed again, fuller this time, and paid him honestly. The metered fare, nothing more, nothing performative, exchanged between two men who'd started the night as stranger and customer and ended it as something neither of them had a name for yet. Mr. Okafor, Voss said as Samuel turned to go. Why did you really refuse the cash in the car? Samuel considered the question the way he considered most things, slowly, honestly. Because the moment you handed it to me, you stopped being a person heading somewhere and started being a problem I was being paid to make disappear faster. I didn't want to be part of however many people in your life get paid to make you comfortable instead of honest. He opened the hospital door to the cooling dark outside. Tonight, for whatever it's worth, you needed honest more than you needed fast. He walked out into the last hour before sunrise, the city rinsed clean by hours of rain, and did not look back to see whether Julian Voss was still watching him go. He didn't need to. Some fares you feel in the road long after the passenger's gone. The lab at Halden Research Campus hummed again with the particular energy of work that matters. Centrifuges spinning, monitors glowing, 12 small patient files pinned to a board with a handwritten note beneath them that simply read, "For Elias." He hadn't lived to see the first trial results, but he'd lived long enough to see the funding restored, long enough to shake Julian Voss's hand without flinching, long enough to tell his sister, in the final clear-headed week the medication allowed him, that he finally believed the work would outlive him the way he'd always hoped it would. Mara stood at the lab's window most mornings now, overseeing a research team that had doubled in size, funded by a foundation Voss had established in her brother's name. Not as a monument, he'd insisted, but as a mechanism, something that kept working long after any one person's guilt or gratitude faded. Twice a month, a taxi pulled up outside the campus gates. Samuel Okafor didn't come inside often. He wasn't a scientist, and he'd told Mara once that hospitals and labs both made him feel like he was intruding on someone else's miracle. But when he did come in, it was always to see the wall near the entrance where the 12 patient photographs hung, growing healthier by the month. A quiet catalog of a night that had started with a man refusing a stack of cash in the rain. Voss visited more than either of them expected. He'd stopped taking calls during hospital visits, stopped signing anything his general counsel hadn't personally walked him through line by line, and had, much to his board's visible discomfort, started asking harder questions about every acquisition that crossed his desk. "You still think about that night?" Mara asked him once, watching the sunrise through the lab windows, gold instead of rain-gray this time. "Every day," Voss admitted. "Mostly I think about how close I came to just handing that man money and never learning any of it. How many other nights like that one did I already sleep through, comfortable, because someone let me pay my way out of paying attention?" Mara didn't answer that. She didn't need to. The lab hummed on behind them, 12 children a little further from the edge than they'd been 6 weeks ago, and somewhere across the city, a taxi driver who wanted no part of the credit was already carrying some other stranger toward whatever truth was waiting for them before their own sunrise.
Here's the thing that stays with me about Samuel. He had every reason to take that money. Nobody would have blamed him. But the moment he said no, he wasn't just refusing cash, he was refusing to look away. And that one choice, in the rain, at midnight, ended up saving 12 children's lives. That's the part we forget, isn't it? We think the big moments announce themselves. They don't. Sometimes the most powerful decision you'll ever make looks small enough to miss. A kindness, a refusal, a choice to actually see the person in front of you. So let me ask you this. If you were Samuel, would you have taken the money? Drop your answer in the comments. I actually read every single one. And if this story moved you even a little, hit subscribe, because there's another unforgettable story waiting for you right now. I'll see you in the next one.